G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Welcome to some contemplative day drinking. If I be honest, as I ponder the manifold problems and ills of the world and I weigh them in my little scales. Such little scales as I possess with which to weigh the troubles of the world. As it were, so to speak, kind of thing, to coin a phrase, if you can see what I mean. Now, today we're looking at the 16th of November 2023. So unless you've been living under a rock, utterly cut off from news, you're going to be aware of the fact that on the 7th of October, something like 1,200 elite Hamas commandos launched a daring commando raid behind enemy lines, their enemies' lines. And they went deep into what, according to the United Nations, is Palestinian land. And in that Palestinian land, they attacked military outposts, police outposts, reserve military outposts, civilian kibbutzes, because the Palestinians have had a bit of a problem with Israeli or Zionist kibbutzes for about 100 years, maybe more, because if you live somewhere and you've been living there for 1,000 years or so and you could consider it to be your homeland, it gets a bit difficult to cope with when somebody says, oh, boo-hoo, sob, sob, I don't like the way my people are being treated all over the world. So we want to come back to where our ancestral grandmother story tells us 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, once upon a time, it was our ancestral homeland. And therefore, we're going to come here. And initially, back in the olden days, when Palestine was a British League of Nations mandated administration, Jewish people from all over the world who wanted to return to what they saw as their homeland, they just used to club together their money and buy some farmland, and they'd go there and they'd start a kibbutz. And gradually the Jewish population of Palestine was increasing after the First World War, because the British had said to the Israelis and to the Palestinians, if you help us fight against the Austro-Hungarian Ottoman Turkish Empire, then we will give you a homeland here in Palestine. The Balfour Declaration, as they called it, basically told lies to both sides, and both sides believed the lies, and both sides were committed to what they thought they had signed a treaty of and bled for. So after the Second World War, because the particular person in Europe who motivated the war and lost the war, he'd had a personal agenda against Jewish people because his father was the bastard son of a French Jew whose father was a baron and had a lot of money. And Grandpa French Jewish baron had paid Adolf Hitler's grandmother child support until Adolf Hitler's father turned 18. And Hitler thought that he basically should have been heir to all of that fortune of the rich French Jewish baron great-grandfather. So he had a bit of a set against Jewish people from the very outset. And his father, Alois Hitler, was an absolute vicious martinet as a father and a womanizer, and he didn't give a shit about his family or his dependents. So he had a hard childhood, not as hard a childhood as Stalin, because Adolf shit himself as he shot himself when he was only 56. Stalin was in his 70s and planning his fifth purge when finally he stroked out. And he was such a terrifying individual that he lay in a puddle of his own piss for 18 hours before any of his aides dared to open the door and see why he didn't show up for breakfast. Lying on a marble floor, shit himself, pissed himself, floating in and out of consciousness after a cerebrovascular accident. And then he lingered for about 5 days. His childhood was so much worse than Adolf Hitler's that Joseph Djugashvili, he lived to be a vicious, martinet, totalitarian, murderous dictator well into his 70s. He died at the top of his game. He didn't run out of free hits on the cosmic scoreboard account until he ran out of time and his game was expired. Because he'd already got to the point where there was no possible way, once he ran out of free hits from his horrible childhood, there was no possible way there were any options for Joseph Stalin to have chosen which would have led him towards the light. Joseph Stalin was headed down. He was just going to get worse and worse and nastier, all because, yeah, he was an orchid child who was beaten and abused and confused and neglected rather than being cherished and loved. You know, like Joseph Stalin could have been Christopher Wren or Isaac Newton if he had been raised by different parents. It's just a fact of life. Anyway, that's a bit off the topic. The point I wanted to talk about is how, as far as I can see here now today, it's pretty much official that Hamas has beaten the shit out of Israel. I say this because we're 6.5, 7 weeks into Israel's response to Hamas's spectacularly successful elite commando raid behind their enemy's lines, during which they killed initially, according to the Israelis, and the Israelis claim that everybody in the world should only believe the Israelis. According to the Israelis' initial claims, Hamas killed 2,000 Israelis, and then they backed it back and they said, oh, no, they only killed 1,400, and now they're backed it back and said, well, actually, they only killed 1,200 and they captured 240. Yeah, okay. And 1,200 Hamas commandos, highly trained, volunteers, totally committed, absolute, in their minds, heroes. Off they went, fighting deep into enemy-occupied homeland, ancestral homeland, to try and get rid of the European Jewish survivors of Adolf Hitler who had been exported by the United Nations in 1946, 47, 48. The United Nations decreed, with no consultation for the Palestinians or the Arabs, the European Jewish survivors from Hitler's 6 years of trying to kill the bloody lot of them, they're not going to want to live with us because they're not going to be as trusting as swamp wallabies with a white man. They're going to think that we're going to treat them randomly at the drop of a hat just as bad as Adolf treated them in 1933 and then 1936 and then 1939, because as soon as he came into power, the Nuremberg laws were proclaimed, and then it just got worse. It got worse and worse and worse and worse. What was Kristallnacht, 1936? I know my hometown, Glen Innes, northern New South Wales, Australia, we used to have 2 actual German Jewish refugees from Adolf Hitler who arrived in town in 1939. Kristallnacht happened. They took one look at it and said, bugger that, let's run away. And they were 16 and 17 when they left Germany and they went to Palestine. And they had a crack at Palestine and they said, well, yeah, Palestine under the English is not that much better than bloody Germany under Adolf. And they succeeded in getting into Australia before all of the European nations and the British Empire pretty much shut their borders to Jewish refugees from Adolf Hitler. So yeah, the United Nations and the Anti-Fascist League, they were all on a bit of a guilt trip, and they decided unilaterally the Jewish people survived Adolf, they deserve their own homeland. What we want to do is deport them. We want to export them. We want to subsidise their outward migration, and we want to ship them off somewhere to have a bloody homeland all of their own where nobody can monster them. And Adolf wanted to send them to Mauritius, and some lunatic wanted to send them to northwest Tasmania. But the Jewish people all over Europe from the diaspora, when they run away from the Middle East because, nobody wanted Jews as neighbours because they were money lenders. And at that time, there was a theological prohibition against usury, which is paying or charging interest on loans, which only the Jewish people ignored. The Christians paid attention to it, the Muslims paid attention to it, the Jews did not. The Sikhs did, the Jains did. It was just one of those theological differences. But over a couple of hundred years, living next door to a small clique of people who gave interest-free loans to anybody within the clique, so their business had no trouble setting up and paying its establishment costs because it wasn't paying interest no matter how bad the year was or how good the year was. And then those rich people lended money to the surrounding neighbours and making them pay interest on the loan, so they had to pay back, like 5% or 10% of the loan every year for every year that the loan was outstanding, regardless of how bad the year was. As that was before they paid off the capital sum that they had borrowed. It wasn't long before anywhere there were usurers, money lenders charging interest, there were denuded, devastated, desertified tracts of landscape, and there were destitute people who'd borrowed money and been foreclosed upon and had their land taken from them and then sold to somebody else. And it wasn't long before the actions of a few Jewish people caused a great number of their neighbours to decide that one's an arsehole, they're all arseholes. Because whereas this swamp wallaby is sufficiently intelligent as to understand that most humans might be arseholes, but not all humans are dangerous, murderous, randomly violent, projectile weapon employing, wild dog deploying, high-speed vehicle employing killers wandering the landscape. That swamp wallaby over there does not go in for collective guilt nor collective punishment. As far as it's concerned, 99 people out of 100 are allowed to be arseholes, and it's still going to treat me as a perhaps reasonable individual until I prove otherwise. I dare you to get any Jewish person anywhere in Israel to consider any Palestinian anywhere within the borders that Israel has stolen under such terms. I dare you to go out and try and find any Palestinian in Gaza or the occupied territories or the refugee camps of Lebanon and Syria and Egypt and Jordan. Find anybody there who's prepared to say, oh, well, not all Israelis are arseholes. It's only their politicians. It's only their military. It's only the ones who pay taxes to support the military. And it's only the fucking Zionists who think that their ancestral God theory grandmother story entitles them to steal somebody else's land. You're not going to find them, are you? Humans who live around the Mediterranean Ocean, those coastal tribes, they are demonstrably not as morally or ethically or intellectually or judicially or jurisprudentially advanced as your average swamp wallaby or grey kangaroo. They're much more like wallaroos. Wallaroos, as far as they're concerned, you were an arsehole once, 45 years ago. I'm not going to trust you now. because once upon a time you killed one of my tribe. That's why I don't have too much to do with Wallaroos, because they still treat me like an arsehole because of shit that I did in 1986. Yeah? Euros are the same. Same time, back when I was a gun nut. So, yeah, the Palestinians, they don't trust the Israelis. As far as the Israelis are concerned, their God theory, their theology, it officially tells them, quote, Abraham's descendants are God theories, chosen race. So as far as they're concerned, their official doctrine is that when you go outside and you look up there into the night sky and you see 100 million stars, just like the one that we orbit around every year, the one that we rotate and see cross our sky every day, every planet around every sun that's visible in the night sky and those beyond the range of visible naked eye looking at, out of all of the life forms, out of all of the people, out of all the civilizations in the whole universe, the creator God theory of the whole universe has a favourite. And the favourite species with opposable thumbs and big frontal lobes and a language speech centre and a larynx and a tongue capable of squeaking intelligibly, it's the Jewish people. So no matter what the Jewish people choose to do, it's going to be ticked off on in heaven because the Jewish people are the God theory's chosen race. It's very, very difficult to negotiate with anybody who's been raised to think like that for 5,000 fucking years. And I've got to say, from what I've seen over the past 6 or 8 weeks, there's a man called Benjamin Netanyahu who once upon a time first gained national publicity and fame for his participation in a violent commando raid behind enemy lines to kill fucking Palestinians because God's on our side. God it is on our side. Gott mit uns. Look at the Kaiser's army's belt buckles. Every German soldier in World War One had Gott mit uns. God's with us. God is with us. Israel believes that the Jews are the God's chosen race. So Benjamin Netanyahu gained publicity and popularity and great success by participating in a commando raid deep behind enemy lines, killing Palestinians for his national honour. No, all right, what comes around goes around. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Benjamin Netanyahu, ever since then, has done everything he could to maintain a state of paranoid armed animosity between Israel and all the neighbours because he knows that's how he gets in front. He was so bloody convinced that he had to worry about Hezbollah and the Lebanese that he was lulled into a false sense of security, security, by Hamas having paid attention to whatever happened in Absurdistan and Syria and Ukrainistan when Western intelligence tapped all of the wireless networks and all the landlines and were able to zero in and home in and target anybody who planned or spoke about anything over social media, mobile phones, landlines. If it wasn't written on paper and strapped to a pigeon's foot, it could be intercepted. If it wasn't word of mouth, lips to ear, it could be intercepted. If the couriers weren't trusted, known not to be turncoats, it could be intercepted. So for years, Mossad, the world's vaunted best intelligence service ever, because, like nobody's ever shot an Israeli political leader. But, less Israeli politicians have been shot than American presidents. So they're considered to be better than the CIA. Not as good as the British MI6 because nobody's ever shot a fucking British political leader. Yeah? Funny that. Anyway, Hamas succeeded in convincing Mossad, the CIA, MI6, all of the Five Eyes, everybody who paid attention except the Egyptians' next door neighbours. The Egyptians kept saying, something's building. This is getting serious. It's going to be bad. I don't know what they're doing. They're going to do something really fucking bad. You're not going to like this. And all of a sudden, bang, the British commando raid on jet where everybody who landed was either killed or captured. Yeah, that was a fucking success. Yahoo, yippee. Everybody talks about how the October 7th Hamas raid into Israel was on the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War in 1973. Guess what, fuckheads? It was also on the anniversary of the day that the SS killed the last Jewish, Polish, patriotic partisans rebelling in the Warsaw Ghetto. And it only took 3 or 4 years of being in a Nazi concentration camp before the patriotic Polish partisans who happened to be Jews decided that, yeah, they'd rather go out and die killing the arseholes who were imprisoning them than continue to live in a concentration camp. 1947 to 2023. That's how long it took the Palestinians in Gaza to decide that's it. They would rather fucking die fighting against their invading, occupying European Jewish survivors from Europe who were deported by the Europeans who didn't fucking want to have any Jews around because they wanted 1960 to be just the way Adolf envisioned it in 1933. In 1963, 30 years after Adolf was elected, you could walk around Germany, you could walk around France, you could walk around Poland, and there were just about no fucking Jews. Walk around Hungary, walk around Italy, no fucking Jews. My half brother and 2 half sisters are Jewish because their mother was Jewish. My mother's brother married a Jewish woman. I have no fucking axe to grind against Jewish people. Though I'm not blind to history. I'm not going to make bullshit excuses for the actions of Jewish people and Zionists and Israelis in the things that they have done against the Palestinians. My position is that the Palestinians are treated the worst of any colonized people anywhere on the world. I say colonized because a colon is a long, muscular tube with a mucous membrane lining and it's filled full of shit. And when somebody who can't make a go of it where they live travels vast distances to a strange foreign land and they look around and they do not understand, they then empty their fucking colon all over everything that they fail to understand. European, landless, ignorant peasant from Europe comes. European colonists came out here to Australia 230 years ago and they've fucked everything they touched. European colonists went to New Zealand, fucked everything they touched. European colonists went to Africa, fucked everything they touched. They went to fucking Asia, fucked everything they touched. They went to the Americas, fucked everything they touched. And I don't mean that in any nice way. I mean for unlawful carnal knowledge, so that the fuckee is never any good for anything after the fucker has fucked with their head. The fact that 12,300 years ago, the death cult of Broadacre Harvest everythingism began in Turkey, and it swept through the shores of the Mediterranean before it swept anywhere else. And it was there that the first city-state conquerors with armies, regimented armies, arose and spread out around the world 6,000 years after the fall of Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, it means that it's deliciously ironic that the world is going, the industrialized, fossil fueled, capitalist, carbon burning world, it's going to shit in a handbasket because of crap that's going on in the Middle East and Ukraine. Karma. Fucking 12,000 year cycles. We're supposed to be going into a fucking ice age right now. And because of the last 270 years, 250 years worth of fossil carbon burning, international global capitalist industrialism, we're going into the worst fucking heat wave planet Earth has had for the last 600 million years. And these dim damn dumb half-wits around the middle of the Mediterranean Ocean, Mediterranean Sea, they're fucking arguing over who gets to live in the desert, where it's life is untenable without fossil carbon to burn. We've just seen that when Israel shut off all of the fucking fossil fuel going into Gaza, and now Gaza is starving and dying of thirst, and their hospitals don't work, and they got preterm babies dying by the dozens. And here's where we get to the nub of it. The reason Israel dropped the ball is because they knew that on the numbers, on how many tanks, how many bombs, how many bullets, how many guns, how many rounds, how many aeroplanes, all that shit, they knew that they were vastly militarily superior to Hamas. They knew that nobody in Hamas who wanted to emerge alive would countenance the idea of attacking Israel. And they were quite willing to believe all of the false radio deception traffic being pumped into the mobile phone sphere and the blogosphere by Palestinians in Gaza talking about how they were sick of war and they didn't want to fucking do anything nasty because they were right into getting a job in Israel and bringing more money in and all. Yeah, Israel believed what it wanted to believe. Whereas Hamas had figured out that if we can lull those silly bastards into a sufficiently false sense of security, that we can print paper attack orders in October 2022 for an attack that's going to happen in October 2023. And we can spend a year stockpiling, preparing, training, and we can go out there. We can provoke Israel to an insensate rage response, a spasmic offensive counterattack against an asymmetric terrorist commando raid. And that's what they've done. And they've succeeded. They have successfully, look at a cesspit, look it up in the dictionary, look at a cesspool, fully, successfully lured Israel to come and try playing fucking Stalingrad in the desert sands of Gaza, attacking cities which have previously been reduced to rubble by Israel, doing exactly what General Paulus did at Stalingrad and ordering their Luftwaffe in to stuka the fucking cities into rubble before sending the tanks and infantry in to get pounded to shit by people sniping at them and firing rocket-propelled grenades and dumping improvised explosives and factory-manufactured explosives, command detonated on every avenue of approach, because Israel is attacking impromptu with a reserve army activated from all of the Israeli Defence Force who were conscripted at 18, forced to do 2 years training, and then they remain on the reserve list till they're 45 years old. And something like 10 or 15, 20% of Israel's workforce is currently running around the fucking sand, wearing out their guns and their boot leather and requiring new equipment. Israel's economy is grinding to a halt. Israel's reserve military population are realising just what a crock of shit that half-wit Netanyahu has led them into. And meanwhile, for the past, is it 5 years or is it 10 years, Israel has been pearl clutching and screaming its fucking fear and boo-hoo and sob and outrage about how Hamas has been putting operational military command headquarters underneath hospitals. And this has grown to become a legend within the Israeli lunchtime. And they have heterodyned it within themselves. And they've got to the point where 7 weeks ago, when Hamas launched a successful elite commando raid behind enemy lines, where they killed and captured more of the enemy than they lost themselves, and they brought back 250 odd hostages to guarantee that Israel had no choice but to immediately attack. And Israel's immediate attack plans have all been guided by the complete shibboleth, which is a Hebrew word meaning mindless, baseless fucking fantasy, you dickhead. The shibboleth that Hamas were dopey enough to actually emplace military headquarters underneath civilian hospitals with World Health Organization doctors and Médecins Français, Sans Frontières doctors working in the hospital. Israel believed all of its own fucking propaganda. I don't know who planted it. Maybe it was Benjamin Netanyahu. When's he getting serious? When's Netanyahu getting serious? What he's done is he's pumped out horse shit for decades. And then he's sat still, believing his own horse shit. He's been attacked and he's whirled around and he's attacked the horse shit that he's been propagandizing for 20 fucking years at least. And now, 48 hours after Israel spent 7 weeks bombing a hospital, they have militarily assaulted with infantry shock troops. They've got into the hospital, they've been there for 2 days, and what have they got to show for it? Oh, we found some weapons beside the fucking MRI machine. So they found a couple of rifles, some bandoliers of ammunition, a couple of rocket launchers, and a belt full of explosives. Beside an MRI machine, because you can't do an MRI on a wounded fucking combat veteran unless you strip their equipment first, and they haven't got time to take it anywhere, so they drop it on the ground, and then, oh fuck, here come the enemy. We have to run away. That's all Israel's got to show. And what happened the day they found they got no fucking tunnels, no underground headquarters? It's all bullshit. It's no better for Israel than it was when George W. Bush got into fucking Baghdad and found no weapons of mass destruction. It was all horseshit. It was a total fucking lie. It was a fucking, oh, it's a slam dunk. Own home goal. Israel just fucked itself in the eyes of every person who's ever had a problem with the fact that there's only 2 bunches of indigenous people in the world who are treated worse than Australia treats the blackfellas. Australia has no treaty at all whatsoever with the blackfellas. Australian blackfellas have the highest incarceration rate of any colonised population anywhere in the world, except the Uyghurs, who are locked up by the fucking Chinamen, because like something like 60% of their population is locked up, whereas in Australia, Indigenous population make up 2% of the population and 60% of our prison population. That's not like, you know, we don't have 60% of all the blackfellas locked up. We're not as bad as China. And you know what? China's not as bad as fucking Israel, because Israel keeps 2.6 million Palestinians in a concentration camp called Gaza. And then they've completely occupied what they call the occupied territories. And bear in mind that before the Israelis turned Gaza into a concentration camp and occupied the occupied territories and the Golan Heights, the United Nations decreed that 56% of Palestine was to go to the Israelis, right? 44% was to go to the Palestinians whose ancestral land it was. The Palestinians and all the surrounding Arabs said there's been no consultation. This is total horseshit. Europe, if you want to give the fucking dispossessed, disaffected, upset European Jews who Hitler failed to kill, if you want to give them a homeland, give it to them in Saxony, right in the middle of fucking Germany. Let Europe deal with what Europe has done to Europe's Jews. Don't fucking inflict them here. We don't want them. We're just getting on with being Palestinian goat herders and fucking olive growers. Soap makers. That's what Palestine was good for. Olive oil soap. Olive oil. Goat's milk butter, goat's milk, cheese, goat's milk. Peaceful bunch of people until Europe decided to take all the Jews Hitler failed to kill and ship them onto the ground in Palestine with the fucking shibboleth bullshit story that, oh, this is yours, you deserve it. Nobody has any right to question it. Yeah, well, what's happened is that bullshit only works for a little while. And you know, we're now 77 years since Adolf Hitler stopped being nasty to the Jews. And guess what? There was no Palestinians serving with Adolf Hitler as concentration camp guards. None. Not one. Not any. None. The Palestinians have no culpability for what Europe did to Europe's Jews. The Palestinians have no collective guilt for anything that they do to rebel against Europe deporting their fucking unwanted Jews to Palestine. And Europe and America and everybody in the United Nations who has been supporting Israel's illegal presence in Palestine because Israel said you can only take 56%, and the Arabs and the Palestinians revolted in 1948. And by the time the shooting settled, Israel had occupied illegally, according to the United Nations, 86% of Palestine. Here's the other thing. David Ben-Gurion and Yitzhak Rabin is two of Israel's first prime ministers. I think the first one and the third, or maybe the fourth. Both of them in 1947 were locked up by the English, right? The League of Nations and then the United Nations mandated Palestinian administration. The British locked those bastards up, two of Israel's founding prime ministers, and charged them with, quote, Zionist terrorism, because both of the bastards had been wearing wigs and women's makeup and dresses and high heels while throwing hand grenades into Palestinian Arab coffee shops and then using stolen Sten guns from the British issued to them to fight the fucking Germans to shoot machine gun the stunned survivors in the coffee shops. Zionist terrorists. They were the very first terrorists to be so designated by anybody within the United Nations, because the very first piece of people to be designated as terrorists were Royal Air Force Bomber Command in 1942 by Herr Dr. Joseph Goebbels in the Berlin Sportsplatz in his commentary on the firebombing of Rostock and Lübeck. A terrorist is not a non-state actor. A terrorist is anybody who employs any military tactic against which the loser has no effective defense. Israel calls Hamas terrorists because they had no fucking effective defense. Germany called RAF Bomber Command terrorfliegerinnen, terrorist flyers, because they had no effective defense. The great British Empire called the Mau Mau Kenyan rebels terrorists because the British Empire had no effective defense. The French called the Algerians terrorists, no effective defense. The French called the Viet Minh in French Indochina, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, terrorists because they had no effective defense. The British called the communists in Malaya terrorists because they had no effective defense. A terrorist is a loser's word for somebody against which the loser has no effective defense. Now, here's the thing. Let's get into the theology of it all. Every reputable God theory for the past 5,000 years has stated, thou shalt not kill. Refinements have come along under the sub-clauses. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Judge not thy fellow human, lest thine own heart/soul be weighed in the balance against the feather of truth and found to be wanting. And a bloke called Joshua ben David, aka Jesus the Christ, he who said the meek shall inherit the earth, He also said, and these are the most repeated phrases in the New Testament attributed to Joshua ben David, Jesus the Christ. Have no fear, there is nothing to fear, you have nothing to fear, fear not. Those are the four most repeated statements of Jesus. Fear not. Yea, though I have no fear, I walk through the yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I have no fear, for the Lord God composes me and is my shepherd. Right? If you actually have the intestinal fortitude, if you've got big enough balls to walk the talk, to live the faith, you will understand that if the Pope of Rome had the tiniest goat knobbly to the compost heap worth of faith in his alleged God theory, the Pope of Rome would not have an armed guard outside his front door, outside his bedroom door, to keep him safe from all of the imaginable evil against which the Pope of Rome does not trust his God theory to keep him safe. What a fucking hopeless, pathetic little hypocrite. Every Jew who says, oh, we are God's chosen race, but our God's not fucking capable of looking after us or protecting us from evil. That's why we've got to have a great big gun, lots of them. Let's pay taxes. Let's get rich to buy more fucking guns for the Defence Force to keep us safe against all the evils we can imagine of which to be frightened. All the alleged Christians, all the alleged Muslims who put such great faith in Muhammad, blessed be his name, Allah Akbar, what a crock of shit. If any of those fucking miserable, lying, cowardly bastards had the tiniest fucking skerrick of faith in the God theory they allege and assert that they fucking believe in and practice, not a single fucking one of them would feel the childish need of holding on to a gun. Would they? Eh? And nor would they need a wooden sword with which to chop up their enemies, the ones that cannot be coped with by their Lord. There you go. That's a girl. So, here's what I think's going on. We live in a universe ruled by free will, by perfect liberty and perfect consequences, by cause and effect. I get to talk to this swamp wallaby because 30 years ago I decided to make friends with her grandmother, cause and effect. I can't go to a zoo and look at a dodo because 400 and something years ago, some ignorant, hubristic, arrogant, greedy, selfish, mercenary Dutch privateer who had invested or been employed by people who had invested in an outfit called the Dutch East Indies Company had set sail in wooden sailing boats with canvas sails, and they were going down around Cape of Good Hope to coast crawl around Africa and look for a way to get to what they called the Spice Islands so that they could invade and assault and capture and conquer and occupy the Spice Islands so that they could corner the European market in nutmeg, which at the time was worth approximately more than gold, because the Europeans had no refrigeration and they were habitually eating semi-rotten meat, and the more spices they could put on it, the less foul, rank and vile their food was tasting. What a great strategy, eh? Try to disguise the poisonous shit decomposing that you're eating. Our very European, landless, ignorant peasant from Europe comes, setting out to colonise the Spice Islands. And on their way, the European colonists from the Netherlands, the arsehole of the world, nether, bottom lands, they decided that they wanted some meat to eat, some protein, so they dropped into Madagascar and Mauritius and they captured the dodos, who'd had no predators, no enemies, no reason to be frightened. And the dodos were really easy to catch and to herd and to bring on board. So the bloody Dutch mercenary privateers setting forth to steal the Spice Islands from the Javanese and the Balinese, they chose to eat the last fucking dodo on earth. And if they didn't eat it, the rats that they left behind them in their wake ate the last dodo eggs or chicks. And that's why I can't go to a zoo and look at a dodo, because of a choice, because of a decision that somebody made hundreds of years back previously in the timeline. Nothing I can do today is going to change that. Nothing I can do today is going to change what Balfour said to the Palestinians, or what Balfour said to the Jews who were living in Palestine, the Palestinian Arabs, or what he said to the Palestinian Jews. Nothing I say or do today is going to change anything that happened in 1947 when the Zionist terrorists, David Ben-Gurion and Yitzhak Rabin, were being locked up for throwing hand grenades and machine gunning at coffee shops and machine gunning the shocked and stunned survivors, and they stole the fucking machine guns and the hand grenades. All in the name of Zion. The theory that the Jewish diaspora that left Europe 1,000 years ago has some God-given right, because they're God's chosen race, to go back to the land their ancestors run away from because nobody could fucking put up with them, after they went to Spain and got thrown out of Spain, after they went everywhere else in Europe, and wherever they go, nobody wants to live with a colony of Jews beside them, because after a couple of hundred years, the money lenders who are part of the Jewish community, not all Jews are money lenders, lots of Jewish people have nothing to do with it, but the money lenders for 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 years, the money lenders have been an integral part of the Jewish community. Jesus was nailed to a fucking tree because the Jewish community of Chamber of Commerce said he was bad for business, and they bribed the Romans to fucking nail him to a tree and stick a spear in his side and shut the bastard up because he threw the money lenders out of the Temple of Solomon. He said it was a blasphemy against the God of Abraham to allow money lenders to charge interest on loans after making a loan to somebody who wanted to buy a pigeon or a guinea pig or a dove. Well, it wouldn't be a guinea pig, but a pigeon or a chook, a fowl, a sheep, a goat, a pig perhaps, to take into the Temple of Solomon and sacrifice in the same way that Abraham sacrificed a sheep rather than killing his own kid, when the schizophrenic voice in his head told him to go out and kill his firstborn son in order to make it rain so that the fucking next season would be better than the last. Right? Upon deranged psychopathic horseshit such as that is the Zionist, Talmudic, Torahistic delusion based to the effect which Jews are God's chosen race. Jews are the God theory's chosen race. The creator God theory, the whole universe prefers a bunch of fucking dispossessed, disaffected, twice occupied and thrown out goat herds from somewhere around Syria. People who'd been captured by the Babylonians and used as construction slaves, who escaped when Babylon fell, who got captured again by the Egyptians, who escaped when Egypt fell, and then settled on the edge of the Mediterranean and tried to pretend that that was where God led them to. That's the ancestral homeland, the only part of the Middle East with no fucking oil and no water. Congratulations. The whole idea that the Jewish people are God's chosen race strikes me as somebody with 3 years of studying psychiatry as a general nurse and having passed the exams, got 100% in the exam, in the psych exam actually. Everything the Jews say about being the God's chosen race, it's an overcompensated inferiority complex wrapped up in projected self-hatred. Right? Overcompensated on a national level, overcompensated inferiority complex wrapped up in projected self-hatred. Anybody who does anything to the Jews is offside with God, so whatever the Jews do to get back at them, that's okay with God. Somebody killed 1,200 Jews and stole 250 more. Therefore, the Jews can go out and kill 12,000 Palestinians in Gaza and claim that self-defense while going out for the fucking Hamas headquarters underneath the hospital. And when they get there, they find that for 5 years, the World Health Organization and Médecins Sans Frontières has been telling them there is no fucking Hamas headquarters under the hospital. And when they get there, they find there's no more fucking Hamas headquarters under the hospital they just spent 7 weeks bombing the shit out of, killing 12,000 fucking women and children and babies and civilians on top of however many Hamas combatants they might have got. Yeah, they get there and they find it's all horseshit. Guess what, Israel? Sucked in. You just turned the whole fucking world on to what level of bullshit you've been peddling ever since Hitler died. Benjamin Netanyahu has done more to rehabilitate Adolf Hitler and the Nazis than anybody in the last fucking 77 years could ever have dreamed to have done. Adolf Hitler said the Jews were a fucking dangerous, devious, violent, avaricious, greedy, murderous bunch of cunts who were going to wreck civilization. Benjamin Netanyahu has proved Adolf Hitler to be not fucking wrong in the eyes of a hell of a lot of people. Me personally, I'm a faithist. I try to have faith that the creator of the universe is not a fuckwit. And we live in a universe run by liberty and responsibility, free will and responsibility. You do whatever you want, but you are responsible for your actions. Benjamin Netanyahu has been leading the Israelis down the path to utter fucking doom and destruction for 30 fucking years that I can think of. Can anybody remember a Tasmanian comedian called Yahoo Serious? He made videos about how Einstein put the bubbles into beer. He was a really big thing in about 1993. I remember him in an interview when Benjamin Netanyahu was commanding the Israeli Defense Forces to go into Lebanon and make absolute fucking turds of themselves until they had to run away because it was not cost effective and it was turning the world against them. And, you know, like Benjamin Netanyahu's entire fucking game plan was failing. And what Yahoo Serious made as a sound bite which went out, you know, millions of times all over the English speaking world was, when's Benjamin Netanyahu getting serious? Think about it. When's Benjamin Netanyahu getting serious? Said to camera by Yahoo Serious, the Australian Tasmanian comedian. Benjamin Netanyahu's never going to fucking get serious because Benjamin Netanyahu, like Kaiser Wilhelm II, he believes what was engraved on the Kaiser Wilhelm II's army's belt buckle in Imperial Germany from 1912 to 1918. Gott mit uns. Netanyahu honestly believes that if he makes sufficiently big of a turd of everybody in Israel, he can finally resort to what they call the Samson option, right? And that's when the bully kicks the fucking temple down, and that's why the Temple of Solomon's no longer there, because the last Israeli hero to fucking kill himself in a kamikaze attack against all his enemies was Samson, and he kicked down the Temple of Solomon. And that's why the Israelis maintain a stockpile of 200 thermonuclear later weapons in order to try and kill every fucking Arab in the donut surrounding Israel. It'll be very fucking interesting to see what the survivors of Israel's first strike do to Israel afterwards. But I can sort of feel it in me waters. This is a coming thing. This is not speculation, it's prognostication, it's extrapolation. It's looking at where the fucking trends are going. And Israel, they lost this fucking war as soon as they let themselves get suckered into mounting an insensate rage-based attack on Gaza and bombing the crap out of a hospital, which they had been assured for 5 years by the World Health Organization and Médecins Sans Frontières had no subterranean secret Hamas military headquarters under it, no matter what fucking Bibi Netanyahu wanted to tell his idiotic Orthodox Jewish followers, his right-wing extremist nutcases. You asked for it, you fucking got it, Jew boy. You asked for it, you fucking got it. I didn't do any of this shit to you. Nobody in the world did this to you but yourself. You've been fucking parachuted into somebody else's backyard and you've made yourselves 20 million turds. Shit on a stick. All your neighbours hate your fucking guts and nobody in the world wants to come to your rescue. And let's be honest, Uncle Spam, the excited status of Norte Americano, they're fucking up past here trying to keep Ukrainistan afloat against Putin because Russia's got a bigger population and they're all totally fucking indoctrinated and obedient. And Ukrainistan's a tiny little fucking place that's totally dependent on the entire free world feeding them free military logistic aid. And simultaneously, China says they want Formosa back. It's not called the fucking South China Sea for nothing. The idea of Taiwan was always a horseshit shibboleth concocted by Chiang Kai-shek, who lost the fucking civil war to Mao Zedong after having been propped up as a corrupt piece of shit on a stick by Roosevelt and Truman and Eisenhower. There is absolutely no fucking reason for America to think that they're going to have a better chance against all the people of China on the beaches of China than China is going to have against Taiwan when America is in absolute, complete, total political chaos, when 40% of the Republican Party thinks Trump is God's gift to humanity, and that means that 16% of the American population is armed and fucking dangerous. I think America's going to disappear in a gurgly hole. It's going to harvest the whirlwind after having sown the wind since 1863. Ever since they finished their civil war, America has been treating the rest of the world as a labour and resource pool, and they've been treating everybody like pieces of shit on a stick. And now they're fucked. And have a look at this. This is a new young journeyman swamp wallaby buck. This fella hasn't been here since he separated from his mummy and he went away. And he knows he can come here and get a feed. I haven't seen this fella for at least a year. And he stayed alive. No, don't eat that. I'll get you a biscuit. Where are you going, little fella? You don't need to run away. Oh, I see. You've come to visit your mum. Yeah? Come on, Mum. You have a biscuit. Yeah. And what about you? You going to come in? Hang on. Let me change hands. I'll throw that up right hand. You ready? Bugger. There we go. See? Told you I throw better right hand than left. Yeah. Yeah. It's last year's Joey. Come to visit Mummy. He's been away for at least 6 months, maybe a year. Isn't that quaint? Cute? Even? I think so. Anyway. So anyway, here's my particular personal prognostication. Israel's going to find itself stuck playing Stalingrad in the desert. They're in the process of discovering that they've been crying wolf for 5 years about a non-existent Hamas headquarters underneath a fucking hospital. They've just bombed the shit out of that hospital and killed 12,000 civilians. And it's not like 1943 when my father's cousin, sitting in a truck with his Avro Lancaster crew as a Royal Australian Air Force Wing Commander, as he was going out to the Lancaster with his crew in July 1943, as they were in their 2-ton Bedford trucks being driven out along the perimeter track to their Avro Lancaster, ready to embark and do their pre-takeoff checks and then start their motors and taxi out and take off to participate in what was then the greatest firebombing raid in the history of aviation militarism. What my father's cousin and his crew were singing in Yorkshire as a Royal Australian Air Force bomber crew was "We shall bomb the blind and helpless, we will kill the halt and lame, we bomb grandmothers and babies 'cause they're Germans all the same, we bomb grandmothers and babies 'cause they're Nazis all the same." Tally-ho, old chaps. Good luck. Hope to see you tomorrow. Eh? What? Hawkeye. And 43,000 hamburgers were barbecued in one night because they cheered for Adolf Hitler. They supported Adolf Hitler. They voted for Adolf Hitler. They paid taxes for Adolf Hitler. They obeyed Hitler's administration. That's why Joseph Goebbels called RAF Bomber Command Terra Flegerant, because he had no effective defence against the military tactic that they were using, asymmetric warfare. My 600 fucking incendiary bombers are better than your 10,000 flak guns and 2,000 night fighters. The bomber will always get through if it goes in there at night time and doesn't aim at anything smaller than a city. 43,000 hamburgers in one night. 63,000 in Dresden a couple of years later. 110,000 in Tokyo. Only fucking 86,000 at Hiroshima and barely 56,000 at bloody Nagasaki. It would only have taken 369 B-29 bombers running a standard firebombing raid over Hiroshima to do exactly what the atom bomb did. And at the time, the United States had fucking 700 B-29s ready to do that job. The atom bombs did nothing apart from publicise the marketing jism in the minds of everybody in the world. Just saying. Just saying. If it's wrong, for a Palestinian from Gaza to cross the border and go out there and kill any of his enemies' occupying forces on his ancestral homeland, if that's wrong, then it's vastly more wrong for any fucking European Jew whose descendants have been parachuted into Palestine to then decide, oh, the Palestinians killed 1,200 Jews, God's chosen race. We better go out there and kill 12,000. Israel has now killed 10 Palestinians for every Jew who died on the 7th of October. Because got me tons, you see. And Palestinians don't fucking matter. And the Israeli ambassador to London has admitted on BBC that if Hamas had a rocket stockpile and a military headquarters underneath an Israeli hospital, there's no way the Israeli Defence Force would bomb the Israeli hospital in Tel Aviv, even if there was a Hamas headquarters under it, because Israeli citizens matter more. Palestinians are not fully human, Israelis are. Palestinians are Untermensch, because when the Zionists got out of fucking Germany, they became Zion Nazis. And that's why Israel deserves everything that's going wrong for it, because they have become indistinguishable from the people who used to be trying to exterminate them. And you answer for your behaviour. You suffer the downstream consequences of everything you choose to do. Israel has chosen to absolutely fucking ignore thou shalt not kill. If I was the creator God theory of the whole universe, I would look down on every warrior on earth, everybody who thinks their creator God theory is incapable and powerless to keep them safe. And that's why they have a weapon, in order to kill whatever they're fucking afraid of. If I was the creator God theory of the whole earth, I would turn my back on the whole fucking lot of them and leave them up to ballistic chance. Ballistic physics. Trajectories. What's the fucking concentration of the nerve gas in the atmosphere with the winds on at the time on the day under those atmospheric conditions? And you know what? If I put the safety of my children in my faith and trust in paying taxes to the Australian Defence Forces to go out there and kill every fucking Chinaman who I might be scared maybe perhaps was going to come up my driveway, then I and my children would fucking deserve to die. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing Australia could possibly do in terms of military murderousness that's going to stop the Chinaman if he wants to come up my driveway and tell me that I'm superfluous to his requirements and shoot me. But you know what? I fully expect my creator God theory to treat me like an innocent victim in the afterlife and make sure that that Chinaman's life turns to shit in the here and now. And you know why Benjamin Netanyahu's life is turning to shit in the here and now? It's because he's been a militaristic, murderous, selfish, hubristic, arrogant, ignorant, colonial occupier of other people's land. And Benjamin Netanyahu, when are you getting serious, you damn dumb fuck? You deserve everything that's going to go wrong with your life, and so does every dopey prick who fucking supports you, and every dumb shit who pays taxes to you, and every fucking ignorant halfwit who obeys your orders and commands. The God theory of the whole fucking universe thinks you're a turd underfoot who's not worth putting on the compost heap. That's my opinion, because I'm a pacifist and a vegetarian, and I expect the meek to inherit the earth when the last two violently doubtful warrior atheists, having stalked each other through the rotting remains of where the last stupor market used to trade, suddenly, simultaneously, pop up from behind, diagonally opposite ends of the fucking festering chest freezer, and they head shoot each other. And when the last two violently doubtful warrior atheists on earth who think their God theory is not competent to keep them safe, when those two fucking arseholes have turned each other into compost, that is when the vegetarians and the pacifists will emerge from our dugouts and our bunkers and our hiding spots, and we will sow our food plant seeds in the rotting remains of the very last fucking warrior doubtful atheists, doubtful warrior atheists. The people who pretend, the apostates and the hypocrites who pretend to have faith while they polish a fucking gun against everything that they know their own faith is powerless to protect them against. Israel's going down. The excited status of Norte Americano's going down. The great brutish empire's going down. The fucking half reconstituted imperial Russian Tsarism's going down. Fossil fueled capitalist, industrialist, harvest everythingism is going down. You know what's going up? Global warming. Global warming is fucking winning. This last winter in the southern hemisphere was the first time in the history of the world where Antarctica's ice cap got smaller during winter. The only thing holding West Antarctica's doomsday glacier in place is the shrinking, floating ice cap, or ice sheet on the sea. There's nothing in Israel worth fighting for when there's 12 metres of sea level rise. 6 from West Antarctica and 6 from Greenland. It's a complete fucking non sequitur. It's a moot point. Nobody who's going to be alive afterwards is going to give 2 knobs of goat shit to the compost heap for whatever the flying fuck happens in Israel and Gaza. It's all crap. Leave the bastards to go for it. Let them fucking kill each other with rocks and sticks. Let them cut each other's throats. They're all out there killing their neighbours' babies and children to try and get revenge for what their fucking great-grandfathers did to each other. The whole fucking lot of them, they're as mad as cut snakes. And it's all by their own choice. It's all what they were taught. It's all what they want to believe. There's no fucking reason why they can't wake up tomorrow morning and say, oh, shit, I think we'd better be pacifists and vegetarians and go and make friends with the fellas on the other side of the fence. Fuck no. They'd rather sit there and get paid to polish a gun and hope someone pokes their head up over the parapet so they can get a medal for shooting the fucking stranger because their national honour depends on it. Every fucking one of them deserves to become compost, and I have no sympathy for any of them. Fuck them all. Fuck them all. Fuck the long and the short and the tall. The black ones, the white ones, the short and the tall ones. Fuck them all, fuck them all, fuck them all. Every prick who polishes a gun to keep himself safe for what they know their God theory is powerless to protect them. They fully fucking deserve what's coming to them, and I have no sympathy, but lots of empathy. Because sympathy is halfway between shit and syphilis when you look it up in the dictionary. I empathise. I understand how they feel, but because I have a brain capable of rational thought, I know it's wrong to give in to such a selfish, frightened, psychotic emotion as the one that's driving the rest of the fucking 8 billion half-wits that I share this planet with. Best I can hope with is that they fucking kill each other sooner rather than later. Because if they'd fucking wiped each other out in a spasmic thermonuclear exchange in the Northern Hemisphere in 1984, we wouldn't fucking have this global warming crisis. So the faster those arseholes wipe each other out, the better I'm going to like it. Because this is the biggest fire plan upgrade of which I can contrive to imagine. Because if I don't do something to support that tap with the weight of the water causing the tank to bulge, it's sticking out into the way. And 2 fire pumps and 57,000 litres of water between what I've got here and my neighbour's bore tanks, it's as much as I can do. to adapt to global warming. So I'm sorry, Israel, Northern Hemisphere, the industrial, capitalist, fossil fuel burning world, the rest of coping with global warming and adapting. It's going to be up to you. You're just going to have to fuck off and die. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Such is life. There is no other way of looking at it. If you believe that polishing a gun is going to keep you safe, if you believe that it's acceptable to shoot somebody else without finding out what their name is or what their backstory is, if you think that it's okay to go out there and kill strangers in the hope that your offspring are going to survive, you deserve to die. You deserve to become compost. The creator God theory of the universe thinks you're a piece of shit underfoot because thou shalt not kill. You can't claim to be faithful to the God theory of thou shalt not kill while polishing a gun or paying taxes to support any military anywhere on the earth. You can't say that somebody who fights for their national homeland, for their duly elected government, is a terrorist. Fuck off. If my father's cousin was called a terrorist by Joseph Goebbels, and Goebbels was an arsehole who shot himself and poisoned his wife after poisoning their children, if Goebbels was the arsehole who invented the term of terrorist to speak of anybody that his military had no effective defense against, then every time Israel calls Hamas a bunch of terrorists, oh, you can't pay attention to what they say, they're just terrorists. They say there's no fucking headquarters under the hospital, just like Iraq said there was no weapons of mass destruction. Just like Hans Blix from the United Nations Atomic Energy Inspector says there was no weapons of mass destruction. The self-centered, vicious, devious, lying, murderous arseholes, they ordered a military attack anyway because it was good for the domestic politics. Benjamin Netanyahu and George W. Bush thought they were going to have a great big fucking success by launching a war. However, the creator God theory of the whole universe thinks warriors are shit underfoot, and I look forward to watching the arseholes all go mouldy with their wives and their children and all of their fucking descendants and everybody who thinks just like them. Such has been their choice. Baubles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao!